When Emily first met Daniel, it was on a rainy Tuesday in mid-autumn. The streets of New York were slick with water, and a bitter wind whipped through the skyscraper-lined avenues. She had just stepped out of a coffee shop, juggling her umbrella, briefcase, and a hot cup of coffee when she collided with him on the corner of Fifth Avenue. "I'm so sorry," Emily exclaimed, brushing droplets of coffee off her coat and looking up to see a pair of warm, hazel eyes staring back at her. "It's all right," Daniel said, smiling as he handed her back the umbrella that had tumbled from her grasp. "Looks like the weather isn't on anyone's side today." That brief encounter could have been the end of their interaction, but fate had other plans. A few days later, Emily spotted Daniel again, this time at a local bookstore she frequented. He was standing in the aisle, flipping through the pages of a novel. "Hey, it's you," she said, surprised but pleased. Daniel glanced up and grinned. "The coffee spill queen." Emily laughed, feeling at ease. "I swear I'm not always clumsy." "What book are you reading?" Daniel showed her the cover. It was a collection of short stories. They started chatting, and soon it felt as though they had known each other for years. Emily learned that Daniel was a freelance photographer who loved capturing everyday moments, while Daniel found out that Emily worked in marketing and had a passion for painting. After that day, they kept meeting by chance, or perhaps it wasn't chance at all. One day, Daniel asked if Emily would like to have coffee with him, and she said yes. That was the beginning of their true connection. Over the next few months, their relationship grew. They spent weekends exploring the city, visiting art galleries, and having picnics in Central Park. Daniel took photos of Emily when she wasn't looking, capturing her smile, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams, and the small moments that made her unique. Emily painted landscapes inspired by the places they visited together, often including little details that reminded her of Daniel, a bench where they had shared a laugh, a sunset they had watched in silence. What made their relationship special was how effortless it felt. They didn't need grand gestures or constant excitement to feel happy. A quiet evening cooking dinner together, followed by watching an old movie on the couch, was enough. They supported each other in everything. Daniel encouraged Emily to showcase her paintings at a local art fair, and Emily helped Daniel set up a website for his photography. Of course, like any couple, they had their disagreements. But even when they argued, there was always respect and understanding. They knew how to listen to each other and find a way forward together. Their love was built on trust, kindness, and a deep appreciation for who the other person was. One chilly evening in December, as they strolled through the park decorated with twinkling lights, Daniel suddenly stopped and took Emily's hands in his. "I know it's only been a year," he said, "but I've never felt like this with anyone before. You make me better, Emily. You make life better. And I want to spend every day making you as happy as you've made me." Emily's eyes filled with tears as Daniel pulled out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. "Will you marry me?" he asked softly. "Yes," Emily whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "1,000 times yes." Emily and Daniel's love story had seemed perfect. Their days were filled with joy, laughter, and quiet moments that made life feel special. After Daniel proposed, they began planning their future together, discussing wedding dates, looking at apartments, and imagining a life full of shared dreams. But sometimes, even the brightest love stories have unexpected turns. It all started with small changes in Daniel. At first, Emily didn't notice. He had always been kind, thoughtful, and attentive, but suddenly, he seemed distant. He would cancel their dates at the last minute, claiming he was busy with work. His texts became shorter, and when they were together, he seemed distracted. Emily told herself that it was just stress. After all, freelance photography wasn't easy, and Daniel had mentioned that he was struggling to get new clients. But as the weeks passed, the distance between them grew. Emily felt like she was chasing after a shadow of the man she loved. One evening, after Daniel canceled their dinner plans again, Emily decided to surprise him at his apartment. She bought his favorite takeout and drove over, hoping to cheer him up. When she arrived, she knocked on the door, but there was no answer. She knew he was home, his car was parked outside. After knocking a few more times, she tried the doorknob and found it unlocked. "Daniel?" she called, stepping inside. What she saw made her heart stop. Daniel was sitting on the couch, but he wasn't alone. A woman with long, dark hair was sitting next to him, and they were holding hands. The way they looked at each other was unmistakable. Emily felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under her. Her hands trembled, and the bag of takeout slipped from her grasp, landing on the floor with a dull thud. Daniel turned, his face pale when he saw her. "Emily." "I can explain," he said, standing up quickly. But Emily didn't want to hear his explanation. Tears filled her eyes as she shook her head. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "After everything, after all the promises you made." The woman on the couch looked uncomfortable and mumbled something about leaving, but Emily didn't care. She turned and walked out of the apartment, her heart shattering with every step. For days, Emily stayed in her apartment, barely eating or sleeping. The pain was overwhelming. She had trusted Daniel with her heart, and he had broken it in the worst way possible. Memories of their time together played in her mind like a cruel movie, his laughter, his proposal, the way he used to look at her as if she was the most important person in the world. How had it all gone so wrong? Daniel tried to call her, but she ignored his messages. She didn't want to hear his excuses or apologies. The betrayal was too deep. Eventually, he stopped trying, and Emily was left to pick up the pieces of her broken heart on her own. In time, Emily realized that she couldn't let Daniel's betrayal define her. She threw herself into her art, pouring all her pain and anger onto the canvas. Her paintings became darker, more intense, but they also became more powerful. People began to notice her work, and soon, she was offered a solo exhibition at a prestigious gallery. On the night of the exhibition, Emily stood in the gallery, surrounded by her paintings and the people who had come to admire them. She felt a sense of pride and strength that she hadn't felt in months. She had survived. And that's when she saw him. Daniel was standing at the entrance, watching her with a look of regret and longing. For a moment, their eyes met, and Emily felt a rush of old emotions, love, pain, anger, but then she turned away. She didn't need his apology anymore. She had found her own strength, and she knew that she deserved better. As she mingled with the guests and accepted their compliments, Emily realized that her heart was healing. It would take time, but she was ready to move forward. Daniel had broken her heart, but he hadn't broken her spirit. And that was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where Emily would create her own happiness, one brushstroke at a time. Emily had always believed that her relationship with Daniel was built on trust and love. She had seen him as her partner, her future, and the person she would grow old with. But when Daniel cheated on her, everything she believed in came crashing down. It all began after their engagement. They had been happy, or so Emily thought. They were planning their wedding, looking at venues, and talking about honeymoon destinations. Emily often dreamed of walking down the aisle and seeing Daniel's face light up as she became his wife. But behind the smiles and promises, something had shifted in Daniel. At first, Emily didn't notice the signs. She was busy with wedding preparations and her growing art career. Daniel, meanwhile, said he was preoccupied with his photography business. He often worked late, claiming he had photo shoots and editing deadlines. Emily believed him. She had no reason to doubt him until one night when everything changed. Daniel had told Emily he was going out with friends after work. It wasn't unusual, so Emily stayed home, painting and watching a movie. Around midnight, she decided to text him to ask if he needed a ride. But when she picked up her phone, there was a message from her friend Lisa. "Hey, are you and Daniel at the Blue Room tonight?" the message read. Emily frowned. "No, why?" she replied. A minute later, Lisa sent a picture. It was blurry, but Emily could clearly make out Daniel, standing close to a woman with long, dark hair. They were laughing, and Daniel had his arm around her waist. Emily felt her chest tighten. She stared at the photo, hoping it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe the woman was a friend. But deep down, a part of her knew the truth. The next morning, Emily confronted Daniel. She showed him the photo and asked him to explain. "It's not what you think," Daniel said, avoiding her eyes. "She's just a friend." "A friend you hold like that?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. Daniel hesitated, and in that moment, Emily knew. He had been lying to her. Over the next few days, the truth unraveled. Daniel admitted that he had been seeing the woman from the photo, her name was Rachel, and that it had started a few months ago. He claimed it didn't mean anything, that it was a mistake, and that he still loved Emily. But Emily couldn't believe him. The betrayal was too deep. She had given Daniel her heart, trusted him completely, and he had thrown it all away. Emily packed her things and left the apartment they had shared. She moved in with her sister for a while, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The pain was overwhelming, but Emily knew she had to be strong. She couldn't let Daniel's actions destroy her. In the weeks that followed, Emily focused on healing. She poured her emotions into her art, creating paintings that were raw, powerful, and full of heartbreak. Her work gained even more attention, and soon she was offered another gallery show. One evening, after her exhibition, Emily received a letter from Daniel. In it, he apologized for everything he had done and begged for another chance. But Emily knew that she couldn't go back. Trust, once broken, was almost impossible to rebuild. She wrote back a simple reply, "I loved you, Daniel. But you made your choice, and now I'm making mine. I'm moving on." And she did. Emily focused on her art, her friends, and her own happiness. She learned that true strength comes from within and that sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is let go of the people who hurt you. Daniel had cheated on her, but he hadn't broken her. Emily was still standing, still creating, and still believing in the possibility of love. One day, she knew, she would find someone who would love her the way she deserved. Until then, she would keep painting her own beautiful story.